Hello, and welcome back to another RiftGuides WildRift video. Today we're going to take a look at the newly released champion, Sivir. And first, let's start with the ability breakdown. Let's take a good look. Her passive is called Fleet of Foot, gains 45 movement speed scaling via level for 1.5 seconds after dealing damage to an enemy champion with an attack or an ability. So if you hit an enemy, you see these lovely swirly boys behind you, these speed lines? You're just running faster. Now, what about her first ability? Boomerang Blade. Sivir hurls her crossblade, dealing physical damage. To all enemies it cuts through. For every 1% crit rate, the damage is increased by 0.5%. The higher the attack speed, the faster or shorter the animation time. So let's take a good look how fast it is right now. Okay, now let's stack up everything. Looks a bit faster. Let's go on to a second ability, Ricochet. Sivir gains 40% attack speed for 4 seconds. Her attacks bounce to nearby enemies, dealing 30% physical damage. If the first attack critically strikes, so will the bounces. Deals 75% damage to minions, and each hit can be hit by a maximum, or each target can be hit by a maximum of 2 bounces. So the things that are very noticeable here is that the second ability is an auto-attack reset. So take a good look. You see? You can be even faster. And the next thing is, you see that the attack speed buff is not limited to the bounces themselves. So take a good look. 1, 2, 3. My attack speed buff is still active, as you see on my second ability. Very interesting. Your third ability is called Spell Shield. Sivir gains a Spell Shield for 2 seconds. It heals her for 284 in this instance, which scales from 80 and AP, and you gain your passive Fleet of Foot when you block an ability. If you ever fail to block an ability, 50% of the cooldown is refunded. As you see, the cooldown is relatively high for this ability, so you'll most of the time just use it to block the most vital ability, for example an Ash Arrow or anything that would kill you. Poke damage, only really if you don't lose anything from using your Spell Shield. Next up comes the ultimate On the Hunt. It grants 30% bonus movement speed to nearby allied champions for 12 seconds. During this period, her basic ability cooldowns are reduced by 40 seconds. Unyielding Valor. While the hunt is active, gain 1 stack of morale every single time an attack on ability deals damage to an enemy champion, and 2 stacks of morale after a champion takedown. Each stack of morale grants 4 AD. At 8 stacks grants an additional 30% movement speed to nearby allied champions, and refreshes on the hunt's duration. As you see, every point you put into this ability grants increases the AD by 1, so you start with 2, 3, 4. So if you have 8 stacks, it's 2 times 8, it's 16, 3 times 8, 24, and 4 times 8, 32. Some nice extra AD, which is roughly, I think, competitive with Conqueror in terms of AD, if I think correctly. But yeah, it's just some nice extra stats you gain. And the duration is 12 seconds, and if you get 8 stacks, it's then 24 seconds. So that's quite a lot of time, especially given the movement speed. So let's take a good look how this happens. So we do this. And our cooldowns are basically non-existent, as you see. Like, look. We don't have any cooldowns. And this is, I mean, I have the Warrior Quick Blade, but yeah. But generally speaking, Sivir as a champion, when you go for any type of play, like, take a good look at how these bounces go. So apparently the distance between these two here is too big, so it doesn't come back. So this is something to take note of, because I've seen this happen multiple times, that my blades go here, but then it doesn't work anymore. If I decrease the distance between the dummies, this will not happen again, which is kind of interesting. Like, now it should work, I think. Yeah, now it works as intended. So if the distance between the targets at the end is too big, it will not bounce back. But you see, the minis are just bouncing back. The Ricochet blades are just bouncing back. Another thing we need to talk about is the bug that still hasn't gotten fixed yet. Take a good look. You see the yellow indicator? Yeah, the Runan's bug, you know? Now it's not in range, but now it's in range again. So you see, that is roughly, I think... Is that half my range? Is this half my range? I think so. So yeah, in this instance, I just gain half my attack range for free. That's interesting, isn't it? And I don't understand why this still is in the game. But now, let's talk about combos. When you want to start a fight, you obviously have your poke tool, right? Like this is your poke tool. You keep on running around with your poke tool and you enjoy your time. So what happens in a fight? So if you want the highest burst damage possible, use your auto attack, then your auto attack reset on your second ability, and then dish out your first ability. As you see, it's so much damage. It's the highest burst combo you can go for, and generally speaking, when you have Runans later on, and you see this kind of range thing here, it will help you deal even more damage. Because if we take a quick look at how much damage this does, it's 30% damage of your 30% physical damage. And if you double it, that's 60. Now we take a good look at Runans. I have to go into here. 55. And extra on hit damage, which only counts for the first attack, by the way. But still, you see that then you'll deal a lot of extra damage. And in an extended team fight, let's say like here, and you just continuously get to hit frontline, or just in this instant here, like here, it doesn't really matter. Like you see, it's highly impactful in terms of damage. But Sivir in general doesn't really have too many combos. Like you can flash this, you can block a spell, the auto attack reset on your second ability. And when you go to fights, you can ult early to get there earlier for the movement speed. Then you get there. Then you stack this as fast as possible with each attack. And voila, you have 8 stacks, got a refresh on your ultimate, and life is good. Now, let's talk about the item build. Because here we need to talk about a few things. So, as you've seen, I've just used Runan's Hurricane. Runan's Hurricane is an item that is still glitched, so it's very potent, and you should basically do it on most of the AD carries in the game because it simply increases your range, unless you need other utility items. So for now, we start with the Gluttonous Grease. The best boots for your champion, the best boots for any AD champion, because they just provide you with everything you want. Your first item has been gotten nerfed and is Bloodthirster, but still, Bloodthirster is one of the most broken starter items you can actually have. Even though it lost 5 AD, it is still 50 plus 11 if you were to buy it on level 1, which is 61 compared to a 40 AD item. And you will even have more AD anyway, because the moment you purchase this item, you'll roughly be, I think, level 7, 6 or something. So you have to add like 6 or 7 AD, so it's 17 or 18 AD, so you have 68 or 67 AD, which is 27 or 28 AD more than Shieldbow, which has gotten buffed. And obviously, the attack speed got nerfed, but it's still a very powerful item for basically every AD champion. Your second item, Navori Quick Blades. So this is an item which is very helpful if you will have high uptime. The bounces with Runan's Hurricane and the attacks with Runan's Hurricane in general allow you to reset faster, and your champion feels very potent with just having more spells available. Your Q does a lot of damage, your second ability does a decent amount of damage if you can get to spam. But if you don't need this item or believe you don't need this item, you can exchange this item with the newly buffed Shield Bow. The newly buffed Shield Bow, where is this lovely item? Shield Bow is way stronger now in the sense of granting you protection. Like, number one, you already have a lot of Vamp from your boots. 7 Omni Vamp. You have 12 here, which is then 19 physical. Then you have this. Then you are at like 24 physical Vamp. And once this the item triggers, you get another 8, which is then 32. This is a lot of Vamp, which will help you stay like safe a lot of times, and you should not underestimate it. However, you will obviously deal less damage because you have less cooldowns, but you'll be way safer. Because this will grant you, at this point of the game, I think roughly 400 something of a shield, right? And with that, you basically increase your life pool by probably like 20% at that point, which is quite a lot. And obviously the Vamp is quite nice. And in most games afterwards, you will just go for Infinity Edge. Or if you don't need the Infinity Edge at this point, because you need more range, then you will go for Magnetic Blaster. Like, let's take a quick look at the item here. Riot Games, where are you? Maneuvering the shop is a blessing, isn't it? Yeah. Because sometimes it will be just better to have the extended range. because whatever damage you have, if you can't reach, you can't deal damage, right? So it's completely worthless. But normally you would just stick with the Infinity Edge, and with the Infinity Edge you'll deal the highest damage possible. But now we have to talk about the armor pen item. In some games, there'll be enemies that don't have enough armor to actually warrant this item, because you don't really care about the 30% armor pen if the enemy only has 100 armor enemies and none of them have plated steel caps. Then this item is actually losing you damage because it only has 30 AD. So what you can do as a move to counteract this, you can think about another item that will provide you with more in the sense of a crit item, which for example here would be Magnetic Blast in the sense of range. Ascend's Reaver, which will grant you more damage on, for example, your first ability. You will have then 30% bonus damage on that ability. So let's quickly take a good look at this. So we have this here. So let's take an enemy dummy. We have all of these items. Okay. 2 times 325. Let's take a good look. How much damage does our Ascend's Reaver do? $367. That's a 100 armor dummy. So you see, depending on what you have to do, you can optimize or opt into these items, and then life becomes easier. There's also another alternative you can look into. If you fight against very tanky targets, then there's a secret trick. First, we go back to the Worry because we believe you'll have to fight often and attack often. What we'll also do is we will go back to Mortal Reminder, if we can find it, that is. And now with Mortal Reminder in our pocket, we go for a sneaky little other item, which you'll never expect here, and it's Black Cleaver. The reason is very simple. So we just place these here, and we take a good look at the armor. It's 100, so Black Cleaver will do a lot of beautiful work. And it's fully stacked. Like, the Black Cleaver has fully stacked on the enemy, which then grants you a juicy whopping amount of additionally 24% armor pen. Not only this item grants you haste, it also grants you more movement speed, which synergizes really well with your passive. Like, you get really, really fast because it's flat movement speed. But the real benefit is just getting more AD, more health, and just more armor pen against tanky targets. Like, if I was able to make these dummies way tankier, you would see that the moment they have like 200 armor, etc., that this will make a big difference as to how much damage you deal to them. There's another thing we can talk about, like, if you don't need an armor pen item early, and you just want to survive in the sense of now just going for shield bow here, you can do yourself a favor and actually buy a very powerful armor pen item, which is this armor pen item here, because then your first ability will slow. And with your first ability slowing, the enemy will have a harder time running away from you, especially since you're so fast. Sadly, it does not apply on your second ability, so you have to keep that in mind. It only applies on your first ability. But lovely to say is that the cooldown on your basic abilities is completely netted. It doesn't exist it doesn't exist. Like, you don't have any cooldowns once you have these items. When it comes to runes, let's take a quick look here. You want lethal tempo every single time. Lethal tempo is just too powerful on your champion because you're working so much around having more attack speed, and lethal tempo grants you up to 100% attack speed on max level, and it's just way too broken to not take. And you basically have budget conqueror on your ult anyway. Brutal, very powerful for AD carries, you should never underestimate this. Giant Slayer, the best rune for AD carries, period, because as an AD carry you will never ever struggle with any squishy champion ever in terms of damage. You will just kill them, and the moment your coup de grace would apply damage or deal extra damage, you would kill them anyway, so it doesn't really matter. For your next rune, for your legend rune, you'll go for Legend Alacrity. Here, more attack speed for free. Alternatively, you can look into Omnivamp, but I don't recommend going for the Tenacity one because you're an AD carry. If you get hit by CC, you usually die anyway, and even if it's like 0.2 seconds shorter on a 2-second frame, it will not save you, so you'd rather go for QSS and rather have more damage in the form of Alacrity. For your secondary rune page, you will go for Bone Plating most of the times, simply because it's the best laning rune. What you can think about is maybe go for Overgrowth, but since Shield Bow has gotten buffed, and it's a crit item, and it feels really bad to go Starrick's Gauge, you know, because then you would overlap lifelines. But yeah, it's still a nice idea. So let's take a quick look at the base stats of Sivir. At level 15, she has 180. Which is not really that much considering Sterok's Gauge, right? There are other champions that have way more AD. But yeah, now we have tackled all of this, but still, let's go back to situational items again. So if we go for a typical, like, standard build, we'll most of the time go with Bloodthirster, Navori, IE, then we'll dip into Armor Pen most of the time. And now we have a flexible item slot. This flexible item slot can be basically anything. You could go for Sterok's Gauge if you're running Overgrowth. Will make you very, very, very tanky. If the enemy is very tanky, you go for Black Cleaver. Grants you a lot of extra armor pen. If the enemy team is allowing you to basically use Runans on them constantly, then you obviously go for Runans. It has a synergy between your second item, Navori Quickblades, and the item itself, because it gives you more ability haste, or rather faster reduction on your spells. Because every single bolt that hits an enemy grants for the cooldown reduction. Other alternatives we have is obviously Magnetic Blaster. Because of range, even though we have more than enough crit, it doesn't really matter. Another alternative would be a Sense Reaver, if we are dealing more damage with our spells, because if you take a good look how much damage we do now with our Q, it's like 900 damage on a 900 armor dummy, which is quite a lot. And alternatively, you know, as we always do, you go for Guardian Angel. Where is my Guardian Angel? Here it is. So let's say you're in a game where you also don't need armor pen. You can also debate going for other options in a sense of, as I said, this, and then you can just go for a tanky item. But you just need to make a decision what you need in a sense of flexibility. Like your core every single game will at least be these two items. You have Gluttonous Grease and you have BT. After this, again, you make the decision between Navori Quickblades or Shield Bow. After this, you make the decision between Infinity Edge or Magnetic Blaster, depending on how much range you need, if you need any range, etc, etc. After this, you can make a decision if you want to go for Armor Pen, like Mortal Reminder, because you want to get your 100% crit, or you dip into another item. For example, if you don't have any security yet, you obviously go for your Mortal Shield Bow. Then as for your last item, because you don't have Armor Pen at this point yet, you go for Cyrilda's Grudge. So you have plenty choices. Oh yeah, and for your enchantments, 99.999%, unless you're playing against a Zed or something, you'll just go this. There's also something, I don't know, if, for example, you play against Zed, and if you pop this, if his ult doesn't deal any damage to you. But yeah. Generally speaking, this is basically everything Sivir. This champion is not very complex, but when do you want to draft Sivir? Like, Sivir has one problem. She's very short-ranged, as you see. So you want to really abuse melee champions. Like, she is not the best into casters, into mages, simply because of range. Like, the only thing she has going for her is like this enormous Q range. But mages will just get away with it, and you need to really all in with your team. Like, you need to yeet in with ult and hope for the best. If that doesn't happen, you'll just get completely denied, and if there's nothing to hit in front, then you can't deal damage. But your champion is very good when it comes to long and extended fights where you're able to hit frontline, so you can just hit them with your second ability and just annoy them. You won't deal 50 billion damage, but you'll still deal enough damage to be an absolute nuisance. And that's basically for today's video. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like, comment to boost the algorithm. If you have any questions, ask me in the comment section below. Sivir is a new champion, so well, can't wait to see how lethality build. Ladies and gentlemen, see you soon.